Yay! Okay, this is my next video for the Believathon, readathon, and it's a little bit over 2 weeks in, I think, and so now I'm going to talk about the books I've been reading during those time. I've read / listened to 6 books. One of them was an audiobook, and I've really enjoyed them so far, so I made some good picks. So I'm going to go over them now. The first one that I read for them The Key, which is the prompt of mystery. And for that one, I read Patkin and Stubbs. I really enjoyed this book. I guess I'm going to say that about all of them. But it has a really strong atmosphere. It's about this girl, Patkin, though actually that's her last name, Lil Patkin. And she lives in this city that's really corrupt and dark, and she badly wants to be a reporter and break a big story, but she just hasn't had much luck until she meets Stubbs. I think that's his last name too. I am terrible with names, even books I like. And he is a ghost, and she ends up joining together with him finally on her first big case, which is to solve who murdered Stubbs. And it is a lot of fun. It has like the same sort of feeling as the more adult mysteries, sort of the dark ones, but like with a middle grade sort of feel on top of it. And I enjoyed it enough that as soon as I finished it, I ordered the second and third book in the series. So that should properly express how much I enjoyed it. And the cover is gorgeous. It also has this really nice texture. Okay, next book. The Strange Worlds Travel Agency. And this one I read for, let me see the prompts list so I remember. For the Crown prompt, which is to read a book that takes place in an alternate world. So this one actually takes place in many alternate worlds, because the main character, Flick, she learns about a society where you can travel to different worlds by going inside of suitcases. The premise sounds cool, though it's like I've read other books before where you can travel to different worlds, and I've enjoyed some of them, but I think this one really stood out. Just the writing made it really feel magical, and really felt like I really felt like I was traveling along with her on her adventures. Obviously, you probably expect that dangerous things happen and things don't go quite right, and you realize there's sort of more going on than we initially are led on to believe. But even without that, it's just I actually bought this book for a friend of mine who loves going on adventures and traveling, because I felt she would really connect to it. Oh, another thing that I really like about it is that there are genderqueer characters sort of sprinkled subtly around the book, which is just really nice to see, especially in middle grade books. And I believe that the author is non-binary, so that's cool too. Okay, next book. Else Time. This one, I should be saying the authors, okay. Patkin and Stubbs is by Sophie Green. The Strange Worlds Travel Agency is by L.D. Lipinski. And Else Time Now is by Eve McDonnell. This one usually most of the books I read are pure fantasy. I don't exclusively read fantasy, but it's definitely the main genre I end up reading. This one is fantasy, but it's historical fantasy, which is different from me. And it actually took me slightly longer to get into, just because the characters sort of talk old-timesy, which makes sense, but I wasn't used to it. But I did eventually get used to it, and I really enjoyed this. It's about these two characters. It's a time travel book, but both of the time travel parts, the past and the future, are in our past. The main characters, two main characters, a girl named Glory, who lives in the future, and a boy named Needle, who lives in the past. And together Needle ends up traveling forward to Glory's time to work together with her to stop this tragic flood that happens, that it's based on a true story where actually many people did die, but in this story they work together to try to prevent that from happening. It's a lot of fun, this book. The main characters both have sort of disabilities, to some extent. Glory has a prosthetic arm that makes things really difficult for her because she's really looked down on for it and basically told that she can't do anything, and she just be resigned to not to basically failing at everything. And Needle, I don't know if he quite has a disability, but he has a really he has a really difficult time speaking up for himself, and he's being badly bullied. And so together they sort of learn how to teach each other how to grow, and all that wonderful friendship stuff that happens in middle grade books. And I did really enjoy it. Okay, the next book I read is wait, let me remember the exact name. It's the one I did the audiobook, so I can't show you the physical copy, but okay, it's Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lin. And I also really enjoyed that one. It's basically a Chinese, I think it's Chinese, folktale story about this girl whose family is very poor, and her father always tells these stories about how they can gain wealth and happiness for their family by all these different folk tales that have been passed down to him. And this girl, she decides that she's going to help her family by going and finding and going up to ask this wise man to help her family. And it's just really sweet. It kind of gave me Alice in Wonderland vibes. Not Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz vibes. Sort of really cozy. I can imagine reading it to a child each night as a bedtime story. It isn't too cliffhangery, but it kind of makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. And it's really charming. So I really enjoyed that. Oh, did I say? Oh, I read that for The Scream, which is the audiobook prompt. Okay, and then the next book I read was The Castle of Tangled Magic by Sophie Anderson. So this one I read for the folktales one, The Flash of Lightning. So this book is I believe Sophie Anderson's other books. This is my first one I've read, but I plan on reading the others now that I've read and enjoyed this one. So I believe all her books are based on Russian folktales, and this one is about a girl named Olia, who I first pronounced her name Alia until I learned that it's short for Magnolia. Her family lives in this giant castle that is filled with magic, or at least her grandmother tells her it's filled with magic, and one day she finds out that her grandmother tells her there's going to be this big storm that seems unlikely, but it ends up coming, and she learns that in order to save the castle, she has to go into this magical land and go on this journey. I don't want to give away too much, but it's really beautiful and magical feeling, and just made me, it was really warm and fuzzy, and I felt really magical. And that's that. And then the last one I've read so far is this really big one called The Keepers, The Box and the Dragonfly. And this one is actually, I also really enjoyed this one. I'm not sure if it had to be quite as long as it was, though I'm also not sure where things would have been cut down. But it had a really cool magic system in it, where these characters, they find out they bond with these magical objects to the extent that when these objects are pulled away from them, they feel like nothing matters, so it becomes basically part of themselves, and they have to protect these objects from these evil creatures who are trying to steal them. Each of the magical objects has its own power, but I don't want to give away what the powers are because that's sort of something you learn as the story progresses. But the book reminded me a lot of Brandon Mull's books, the Candy Shop War, Fablehaven, kind of gave me those sort of vibes, and those are books I really enjoyed as a kid. And yeah, I do plan on reading the next book in the series, though I found it's even longer than this one. That I might listen to the audiobook, but I'm pretty sure it's 17 hours long, which is quite long for a middle grade audiobook. But I didn't say the author, Ted Sanders. Oh yeah, and I picked this one up just because it looked interesting and it had really positive reviews on Goodreads, and just I was intrigued even though I had never heard of it before. So yeah, the last book I have read so far for Believathon, and I'm very pleased with my picks so far, and I'm glad I got some great recommendations. But I'm excited to keep reading, and the next book I plan on reading, and I very give a little tiny bit of start, like 2 pages in so far, is this one, The Girl Who Drank the Moon, and I've heard fantastic things about this book, so I'm super excited. And that's it so far, but looking forward to reading more.